The Badgers open the season on Saturday, 2:30 kickoff on FS1. Head coach Luke FICKELL is here. We'll have some opening comments, then we can take questions.
Obviously, this is an exciting time for all, not just myself. I think all of our guys, you guys know. I mean, game one is so unique in college football with the time that you spend, preparing for one game and never having a scrimmage of any sorts or anything where you do anything with anybody else. So week one is always incredibly intriguing. I think obviously in year one, it's even more so, right? For me, for all of our players. I kind of said this morning, it's almost like, Christmas morning. You're preparing for a lot of things. There's a lot of anxieties. You're excited about it, but yet there's a lot of things that you just don't know from each other. So for all of us involved, it's an exciting time. I'm kind of excited too to actually get to Saturday. We're not ready. Not saying we're trying to push the whole week by, but just to feel the buzz, to be in the stadium, to, all the things that you think you remember from the times of playing here until the first time of really playing here and recognizing some of those things. I know for me, that's one of those things that's on my list. I won't take much time to probably look around and enjoy it by any means, but the excitement, the buzz, the feeling, curious to see how our students show up, if we can try to find a way. I heard to get them in a little bit earlier and start this thing off the right way. It is a 2:30 kick, so it shouldn't be that early for them. So hoping that maybe there's some newness to getting some things maybe adjusted up a little bit. That's a suggestion from our players. But I think all in all, it's just that ability to really be excited about it. And then in my mind, for you guys, what does Saturday look like? Again, for us, it's about being able to play clean. In week one, that's the things you kind of study, right? The ability to play clean, those pre and post snap situations, to take care of the football offensively and defensively if you have an opportunity to have it, and then your ability to tackle with things that you don't get a chance to do nearly as much in all of fall camp, never having a scrimmage of any sorts in college football. That first week, those are the things that kind of, will leave me in particular laying awake a little bit on Friday night. Just, that picture of being clean, that picture of taking care of the football, that picture of tackling really well in week one. But we've got some work to do, but we're excited about getting to Saturday.
Luke, you mentioned the buzz. I'm just curious. You had a season opener as an interim head coach at Ohio State, then you had the season opener as the Cincinnati head coach. Was your feeling at Cincinnati different than it was at Ohio State, and do you anticipate this will be different? But you're older now.
Yeah, I would definitely think it's going to be different. In the first one, I couldn't tell you 1 second about what it was like. I mean, they're all whirlwinds, but it was, who knows? Couldn't even tell you we played. I can tell you a little bit about the Cincinnati one. It wasn't exciting, and I don't mean that it wasn't. There weren't many people in the crowd. I know we played Austin Peay. We really did not play very well, and some way we came out with a victory. So that little anxiety of remembering what week one looked like at Cincinnati will keep me up a little bit. But again, I think there's a lot of things that through the past and experiences that I've learned from, but week one is always a unique situation in college football, and obviously in year one in particular, so many things you're curious about yourself, let alone what you're going to see across the way, meaning a new offense, a new offensive coordinator with a lot of new coaches, just a lot of unknowns.
Luke, going back to that first year at Cincinnati, it may not have gone the way that you wanted, but it also obviously laid the foundation for the future. I imagine you've been asked something along these lines these last 8 months, but what does success to you look like in year one at Wisconsin? How would you define that? Playing our best ball at the end of the year. I know that's pretty vague, and that's a way of not answering the question in a lot of ways, but it is. If we're consistent, if we continue to grow, and we're playing our best ball at the end of the year, I think we'll have everything in front of us. We'll have an opportunity in those last 3 or 4 weeks to put ourselves in a chance to play for a championship, and that's what it comes down to. But if we don't grow, I mean, we know where you are in week one and where you are in week 8. I mean, if we're in any similar areas in week 1 to week 8, then we won't be playing our best ball at the end of the year. And if you're not, it's really hard to be successful and look at a season as being successful. So does that mean you
kind of rub off and don't worry as much about the first 3 or 4 games. No, that's not the case. But we know that there's a progression to this. There's a process to it, and I don't want our guys, just like our coaches, to feel like this week 1 is when you got to win it. Like, no, there's a process to doing the things we need to do, to getting better, to figuring out what it is that we have, and still evolving what we've got. So, big for me is this how we do things together. That's what I've always looked back at Wisconsin and recognized that whenever I played them, whether as a player or preparing for them as a coach, you knew that what you were going to get was one. And to me, more than anything, with newness, everybody's got their own personal goals, but how do we do things together? Do we have a complementary, offense and defense and special teams, and ability for us to keep that locker room really strong and do everything together?
I know when you first got the job, the first few months, you talked a lot about saying you didn't want to build a program primarily through the transfer portal, and that maybe after this year, it would just be like maybe 3-4 transfers per year. I'm just wondering, with the amount of transfers you've been able to integrate into the roster this year, have you revised your opinion on that at all, or what is your plan for transfer portal in future years? No, our plan won't change. I say it won't change. It won't change until all of a sudden we decide maybe this isn't the route we need to go. But for us and what we want to do to sustain it and to grow it, I think you've got to have guys for 3, 4, and 5 years. And I think as we look at the kids, the players we're going to recruit, and I say that from in the state as much as anything, you're going to get guys that in year 1 and 2 are going to look a lot different than they are in year 3, 4, and 5. And to me, that's where we've got to still make our hay, and we've got to believe that. So, that's why continuity and things are really important to me. And I don't just mean that in players. It's also in coaches. It's also in your strength program. And if that's your philosophy, then why would you be any different in how you want to recruit? So, obviously, things can adjust and adapt, but I'd be disappointed if, we weren't, 85, 90%, taking guys out of high school, having them for 3, 4, and 5 years based on, if they have an opportunity to go play at the next level, and then sprinkle in the ability to find some, I'm not saying difference makers, but guys that can fill holes and gaps and things you need based on how years go.
Seamus in the back.
Luke, when you're installing new schemes like this team is, and particularly on offense, how quickly can you expect this new offense to start? How quickly can it all come together?
We'll see. I think it has a lot to do with leadership. It starts with not just with Coach Longo, but that whole entire offensive staff. Their ability to make sure their guys understand all things that could and can happen within a game. I mean, so it's hard to pinpoint like what exactly the same thing. What is success in week 1 or week 2 or week 3 or as an offense, and it's an evolution. But I think that's why for me it's about the ability to go out there in week 1 in particular and play clean. You don't have a whole lot of ideas what exactly you're going to see, right? I mean, there's new people in college football. There's no scrimmages. I think we got a better idea going into the game what we'll see defensively, maybe more than offensively. The head coach is a defensive guy. They've got some new people on the defensive side, Mike Caputo being one of them. But in general, I think you got a better idea. So I think it gives our offense a chance to at least have their preparation to be a little bit higher, and the adjust on the fly like you might have to do defensively might not be as great. But again, there's no definition of what it looks like, right? If we play clean, if we play fast, and people would say, what do you mean play fast? Like no huddle? No, play fast, meaning our guys look fast, regardless of what they run the 40-yard dash. And when you know what and why you're doing things, you play a lot faster, you look a lot faster. And to me, that's the key. It's not just how many yards and how many points. Ultimately, it's about winning. But what do we look like? How do we do things? And the discipline and be able to play clean.
Jeff.
A couple of days ago, the Big Ten announced that there will be an injury report this year. I'm just curious, how heavily were the coaches involved in that discussion process, and does it make a difference to you? Are there pluses, minuses to this? What are your thoughts?
I think most of the guys in the Big Ten like to give their opinion. As for me, I just kind of keep it to myself. I'm year 1. There's a lot of things I got to do before anybody probably wants to hear my opinion. But I think it's a good thing, to be honest with you. It takes the ownership off of some of the things that are going on out there, whether our kids or our coaches or what's coming out of your camp going into game week. I'm not oblivious to understanding what's going on in college football in particular, with gambling and things like that. So I think in a lot of ways it just kind of takes that out of the picture. Some people are worried about guys not telling the truth and who's available. We only have to do it 2 hours before. I don't think it's a big deal. I actually think we're better off making sure that we can eliminate any of those issues that could come up within our program.
Coach, this is obviously your first time coaching with the new staff. Some guys that you worked with before, but some new guys as well. How do you try to prepare, trying to coach a game? Obviously, you guys have been using the headphones in practice and things like that, but how do you, going into the first game, prepare for that new experience?
There's some things you can't prepare for. I mean, just the nature of, how everybody is on game day. There's some I'm curious about. That's the great thing of, being with a bunch of the guys, have coached with them, been in those situations, that you got a better idea of how they are on game day. But there's no really preparation. We have a mock game on Friday. We had some big scrimmages where it's very competitive. You had a spring game where you try to make it as competitive as you possibly can, but it's different. And I think that you got an idea and you go into this and you got a plan. We've talked out a million things, and I'm sure they're sick of talking, through all the different situations and how we will handle things. But that's, I think that's the uniqueness of college football, not having any of those, so to speak, preseason games or scrimmages where you can legitimately work through some of those situations with a new staff. But so I think we're in a good place, but Saturday will tell a lot too.
Talking about game week and kind of building off that, is there anything specifically that you've integrated that is as a game week preparation just leading up to Saturday?
Well, I just think everybody's schedule can be a little bit different. The schedule for whatever these guys have been used to, is going to be different. So we kind of went through that this past week. We did a mock game on Friday, which I just wanted them to do everything from how they walk into the building to the hour and a half, the 2 hours before a game. So we did literally every single thing that we would do from the time we walk in the building to the time the ball's kicked off. And that's different for them. Not saying it's better, not saying it's worse. It's just different. And there are some things we had to, kind of, revamp maybe in the ways that I've done them based on, the things that Coach Longo and the offense wanted to be able to do in pregame. So I think all that, more than anything, we just tried to get those things out of the way, because come Saturday when we walk in there at, 12:30, right, 2 hours before the game, I don't want these guys to have any questions about now where do I go for warm up? And no, they're into the routine. They can focus on what it is that they have to do on the field. So a lot of those things, I think, hopefully we've taken some of those anxieties away from those guys to say, hey, it's about the game on Saturday. I want us to worry about nothing but the game.
People are obviously eager to see what this offense looks like in a game day situation. And now that you've had a chance to coach this team through spring and preseason camp, what would you say is your biggest question about what you want to know or learn about this group in an actual game setting?
Well, I think on both sides of the ball, I want to see how physical can we play. I think more than anything, I've kind of hammered apart at that and everything that we've done about the toughness side of things. So to me, how physical can we play? And that's not just up front. It always starts up front, but I think on the edges and on the perimeter as well. How clean can we play? I mean, it's something new and it's something different. And we've had a lot of opportunities. We had 22 practices already, or 23, and we've had 15 spring practices. So they've been in these situations, but they also haven't been in them in front of 84,000 and on national televisions and things like that. So things are a little bit different. But I think for me, that's why it's so key on, hey, we've got to be in week one. We've got to play clean. We've got to play fast. And if that means you're really simple in what it is that you're doing and you don't have everything at your that's fine. I don't want to get into, us having too much and not allowing our guys to be confident in the things that they're doing and play really aggressive and really fast. And, that it's not saying, well, you're taking somebody lightly or not doing everything that you would do. No, that's not that. I just mean in general, my challenge to coaches each and every week, no matter what the game is, I don't want too much. it still comes down to who's going to play the fastest, who's going to play the hardest, and who's going to be the most aggressive. Some would say make less mistakes. I don't like to say that. I want to think about the positives, but the ability to be aggressive but be confident in what you're doing. So I think there's a balance there, but in week one in particular, I think that I want our guys to be as simple as we possibly can.
We're in this really unique era right now of six-year seniors. So with that backdrop, how would you assess Tanner Mordecai's decision-making, specifically if there's been any evolution from spring until now for Tanner?
Well, we'll find out on Saturday. I think that he has been through a lot of things. He has recognized, he has seen, if there was one thing that, we don't want to, hinder a guy, like he is an aggressive player. And I think in the spring, I'm saying that one day in particular, it was noticeable that maybe he was over-aggressive and, he threw a couple picks. There's an opportunity that we kind of say, look, we don't want you to play passive. I don't care if you're a quarterback. I don't care if you're the center. I don't care if you're whoever it is. But there's also a way of playing clean. And I think in week one, it's on us every bit as much as it is on him to put him in those situations where, hey, we can be aggressive, but we can do it in a smart way. So sometimes I don't look just at the player as to how do we keep him from making some of those decisions. It's how do we put him in, into the position where we're not going to have to make some of those decisions. And what does that mean? That you can't guarantee, but stay out of the third and long situations where, those aren't the greatest situations offensively. And then make sure that we understand the things that we're doing, because we're going to get some new things, right? It's week one. There's going to be something across the ball offensively and defensively that we have not prepared for. And your ability to be able to handle that is going to really kind of tell us where we are in a lot of things we're doing.
Luke, Phil Longo hosts a camp clinic every off-season. Maybe that's not the right word for it, but he gets a bunch of coaches together. I believe you've participated in it. Can you kind of give the Cliff's Note version of just what?
It's a lot of football for a long period. So 7 days, they go breakfast, lunch, and dinner with, I'd say a script, but a schedule of things. They take some breaks in there to eat and maybe have a couple beverages and a cigar at night. But it's just a lot of football. For me, I couldn't. I was like a 2-day guy. I started off maybe 2.5 days, and then kind of whittled it down to about a day and a half. But he's continued to do it ever since I've known him. I did not make it this year, unfortunately. With some of the things that were going on here, it was at a time where I couldn't get away, which was disappointing. But I just think that shows you. I say Phil in particular because he kind of runs it and kind of hosts it. His willingness to continue to learn and to grow, and even since the time I started it, where it was just offensive guys, just kind of the air raid background, in the 5 or 6 years I've been around, it is completely morphed into a lot more kind of both offensively and a few defensive guys, and a lot of guys, whether they're from the NFL or college, but are not just tied to the tree. And I think it's a great indication of we in particular recognize the evolution of college football. And if you're not evolving, you're not growing what it is that you're doing, then you're going to wake up and be completely behind in all things that are going on. So I think that's why it's interesting to see as we continue to grow. We have a foundation both offensively and defensively of what we do, but as we grow through the season, we see who we really become. And that's what I talk about playing your best ball at the end of the year. It's recognizing even during a year you're evolving what it is that you're doing and your guys can handle.
Zach,
Luke, do you have any idea how long Isaiah Mullins might be out? And also, Marty Stry being named a captain, it seemed like it was a pretty big deal in that room. What stands out about him?
So Isaiah, I don't know. He had a scope maybe 2 weeks ago or so. Not to that point where we would know if he's 2 weeks away or 3 weeks away. We'll have to see. So I think we're still a week or so away from figuring out what we can project on that. And I would say Marty has just been a pillar in everything that we've done, right? I mean, there's been so much change in the last 9 months. Guys have handled it incredibly well, but even for us as coaches, he's been a guy that you could always count on, right? I mean, when things are different and things are, new, he was a guy that you could look at and always get the reassurance, right? And you know that when you've got guys like that, then you know that things inside your locker room are continuing to grow. And I think that's really big. That's really big. It's big in a new year. It's big in, I say a new season, but a new team in a lot of ways too. And so where Marty's role might not be as much, defensively, it'll be maybe greater, with the special teams. His role within that locker room, I think, has really shown, because he was elected by his peers and his players and the guys around him, both offensively and defensively, as a guy that they look up to and they trust in everything that they do.
We've got time for 2 more. Jake?
Luke, has there been any update with Michael Mack and his waiver status and if he'll be available for this season?
We don't know yet. Kind of waiting on a little bit of a response, and hopefully we'll at least get a response here really quick. I don't know that the military does anything, and can't push or drive them to get too quick of a response, and then it goes to the NCAA with some of the stuff. So we're not sure just yet.
Steve? Just wondering, it's kind of a big picture thing. With your Big Ten background, this league's kind of had a reputation for smash mouth football over the years. Always teams ranking near the top of the nation in defense, not necessarily in offense. With some of the coordinators who've arrived, your Bill included, and the Pac-12 teams coming aboard next year, do you sense that reputation might change, the style of the play might shift a little bit, or do you think it's always going to be, with the climate of the teams here, that's a defense-first conference? I
think the whole landscape of college football is continuing to evolve, right? I mean, but I do think there is a nature of playing really sound in the Big Ten. I think there's a nature of playing really physical in the Big Ten. Not that they don't do it in other conferences. So if that means that, maybe there's better defenses or less, offensive firepower in the Big Ten, so be it. I think the addition of obviously some of the West Coast teams is going to make us all recognize that, we've got to continue to grow. And I think that's where, in some ways, I would say this. I don't like to say that offenses have grown ahead of defenses, but I think that they've done a better job offenses in college ball and of evolving and not changing the game, but making the game a little bit different. And I think defensively, in general, we just haven't been as good throughout the country of keeping up with offenses. I think defensive guys have been set in their ways a little bit, but I think what you're starting to see is an evolution and change on both sides of the ball. Will it affect the Big Ten? Yes. I don't know exactly how. And people would say, well, the weather. No, it's evolving, it's continuing to change, but I think the uniqueness of always in the Big Ten, it's about playing physical, and it's about playing sound, and if that means that there are better defenses across the board in the Big Ten, then there will always be better defenses across the board.
Thanks, Coach. Thank you.
Thank you.